Olga from Minerva. Today I'm going to be showing you how I made the Burda 6573 trousers. This pattern has tons of retro vibes. It's a semi-fitted trouser with a wide leg, darts at the back, and also a center back zipper. The pattern features two views. View A has the full-length leg and decorative buttons, and view B is a more mid-calf length and also has pockets, but no decorative buttons. So I actually made view A, but with a twist. I added the pockets. Because the buttons on view A are purely decorative, I figured out that if I sew them on in a specific way, then I could have the pockets and the buttons, so I could have the best of both worlds. The only catch here is that obviously the buttons are a little bit harder to sew on, but I didn't find that it was a big hindrance, more like a little finicky at the end, but definitely worth the hassle for me. This pattern is labeled an easy pattern, and I would agree with that. This is a really great one for confident beginners or anybody who wants a really stylish and retro pair of trousers without all of the hassle of getting a good fit on a more fitted trouser. So I think these are a really great option. They're really easy to make. They're a really quick project. So I definitely recommend this one. I think you'll have a lot of fun making it. The fabrics that the pattern suggests for us to work with are some lightweight wools, cotton fabrics, blends, and linens. So I actually chose this really lovely denim from our Minerva Core Range collection. So this lovely fabric is our Minerva Core Range 290 GSM soft wash denim fabric in the dark blue colorway. I loved working with this denim. It has a really lovely weight. It sews super easily and it's really, really comfortable on the skin. To make view A, you're going to need between 1.85 meters to 2.15 meters, depending on the size that you're going to be making. We will also need some interfacing. I'm using the Vilene Vliezline Super Light Iron-On interfacing in black. We'll also need thread. I'm using the Gutermann Sew All Polyester Sewing Thread in color 113. For the zipper, I'm using this Concealed Invisible Closed End Zip in the color navy blue. Make sure that the zip is at least 22 centimeters long. This one is 22.5. For our decorative buttons, I'm using the hemline round shell buttons in the natural colorway. They measure 2.3 centimeters and we're going to be needing 6 of these. Finally, I'll also be adding a Minerva exclusive woven label. All of these items are going to be linked below as always so that you have everything you'll need to sew along with me. And of course, remember to save this video so that you can follow along at your own pace. Prepare all the paper pattern pieces. For view A with the pockets, you're going to need all of the pieces provided. Lay your fabric folded with right sides together and cut the paper pattern pieces out of the fabric. Each pattern piece will have written on it how many pieces you need to cut out of the fabric. Keep the grain lines indicated on each piece in mind. The seam and hem allowances are included in the pattern. Not all Burda patterns will have the seam allowance included, but this one does. So the seam allowance for this one are 5/8 of an inch or 1.5 centimeters, and the hem allowances are 1 and 5/8 of an inch or 4 centimeters. Remember to also cut out the interfacing pieces. Double check on each pattern piece how many interfacing pieces you need for them. To apply this interfacing, use your iron on low to medium heat and leave it on for 8 seconds. Transfer the markings of the pattern onto the fabric. I copied most of the markings using tailor's chalk or a heat erasable pen. Right, now that all of that preparation is done, we can actually get to the sewing parts. Our first step is to sew the darts on the back pieces. To do this, I first put pins from one line of the dart to the other while the fabric is flat. Then I pinch the fabric and pin properly, double checking that the lines are parallel. To sew the darts, I start at the white part of the dart, making sure to backstitch. Then I sew all the way along the lines until the tip of the dart. Here I do not backstitch, but leave the thread tails long. When all the darts are sewn, I tie off the long threads at the tips of the dart a few times, then cut off the excess. Finally, I press them toward the center back using my tailor's ham. Next, I laid the front pieces with right sides together with the back pieces, matching the inside leg seams. I pinned that in place and then stitched. Using my serger, I finished the seams and then pressed them. If you do not have a serger, don't worry, it's okay. You can use either a zigzag stitch on your regular sewing machine or any other kind of seam finishing technique that you like. For example, you can use French seams or seam binding, anything that you like that will get the job done. But I do recommend that you use some type of seam finishing because this fabric does tend to fray a little bit, and with time and putting it in the wash, you're going to notice some wear and tear on those raw edges, and definitely is worth the time of taking that extra step to make sure that you have a nice finished product that is more professional looking and has a longer life. Before attaching your invisible zipper, make sure to finish the seams it will be attached to. For the best results, use an invisible zipper foot on your sewing machine for this step. To attach the zipper, first I pinned it face down on the seam allowance of the opening edge. Then I stitched that down with the help of my invisible zipper presser foot and repeat it for the other side. To close the center seam, I laid the front and back pieces with right sides together and pinned them, making sure to match the inside leg seams. I stitched it down all around until I reached the zipper, and then I sewed up diagonally to close that. Then I finished the seams with my serger and pressed that seam as well as possible. Next, we'll be attaching the front waistband. First, I pinned the front waistband with right sides together to the front pieces of the trousers and stitched that down. I then finished that seam and pressed it. So this is where the instructions for each view differs and actually where I went off-pieced. The first thing I did was pin one pocket piece to each trouser piece with right sides together between the markings. Stitch that down and finish this seam up until the end of the pocket. Then I went ahead and understitched all the pockets. Understitching is a line of stitches that are sewn close to the edge of a facing or a lining to keep it from rolling towards the outside. It keeps the facing or lining firmly on the inside of your garment without the stitches showing on the outside. So first, you're going to press all the pockets pieces, seam allowances towards the pockets. As if you were top stitching just the pockets, you're going to stitch the seam allowance to the pockets close to the seam. When you've done all 4 pockets, turn them to the inside and press them firmly. After that, I laid each front piece on top of its corresponding back piece with right sides together and pinned the side seams and the pockets together. Make sure to match the side seams around the pockets because these will be visible. Then I stitched that down all around, making sure to pivot at the pockets, and then I finished the seams, including pressing. Moving on to the waistband, first I pinned the back facings to the front waistband with right sides together at the side seams and stitched. I finished that seam and pressed it. Next, I pinned the facings and waistband to the upper edge of the trousers with right sides together. I folded back the facing edges about 1/2 centimeter or 3/16 of an inch before the opening edge and pinned that down too. I also took care of the zipper tape to make sure it would be tucked under the facings when they were turned out correctly. I stitched that down and finished the seam. After pressing the seam allowances towards the facings and waistband, I understitched this seam as far as possible too. When I turned the facings and waistband out to the inside, I also pressed the seam allowances in on the opposite long edge of the waistband and facings. Then I pinned the facings to the zipper on both opening edges and both the facings and waistband down on the remaining edge. It will be helpful to trim away those corners in the opening edges to make them lay a little bit flatter. This is also where I'm going to be adding my Minerva exclusive woven label. I then slip stitched all that down by hand to achieve an invisible finish. When I got to the Minerva label, I first stitched that down loosely to the seam allowance and then I slip stitched it closed just like I was doing everything else. For the hem, I started by running it through my serger to neaten those edges, and then it was time for some math. So the pattern states that it is calculated for a height of 5 feet 6 inches or 168 centimeters. I also know that the hem allowance is 4 centimeters or 1 5/8 of an inch. Taking into account that I am 165 centimeters tall, I added 3 centimeters into my hem allowance and stitched it down by hand. I could have cut this off, but I decided to leave it, in case I grow a little taller or if I ever decide to wear this with heels. Our last finishing touch is to sew on the buttons at the markings. Make sure that you are careful with the buttons that lay over the pockets so that you don't sew your pockets shut. It takes a little bit of maneuvering, but I definitely think that it's worth it. I am so happy with this make. I can't even begin to tell you. I absolutely love the fabric. It's super easy to work with, really comfortable, and I really enjoy these trousers. I have a sneaking suspicion that these are going to be like my go-to trousers for everything. They have all of the good retro vibes that I go for normally. They actually fit really well into my wardrobe. I've already tried them on with a bunch of different outfits and they look good with everything that I have. They're so comfortable. Like, I normally don't wear trousers because they make my knees hurt. I have thoroughly tested these and they are really comfortable. They pass my knee pain test. If you do end up making your own version of these, we would love to see it. So please make sure that you share it with us on Minerva.com. If you don't already, you can create an account for free where you can do that, where you can share photos and videos. Yeah, I think it's a really great place to be. Everybody is really nice. The whole community is super friendly and everyone loves sewing, all of these different branches of sewing. So it's a really cool place to find inspiration, to speak to other people who like the same things as you. And I've made some friends on there. I have to admit, I've made quite a few friends on there. If you want to find me on Minerva.com, my handle is Crafty Olga and it will be linked below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and I will see you in the next one. Bye!